Here's the real question, Rupert. Did you drink ayahuasca with Terence Mckenna?
No, I didn't actually. I've done other things with Terence Mckenna, but not ayahuasca. I did visit Terence McKenna's ayahuasca plantation in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, where he was growing it?
Yes.
Okay. He grew everything in his...
He did. He
right?
was, I had a wonderful time there, staying in his botanic garden in a remote... It was like half a mile on a four-wheel drive up the side of a volcano in Hawaii. It was called Botanical Dimensions.
Is that your Mckenna
Yes.
That's great.
But here's the real question.
I want to hear more about Terence.
Okay, up to you.
All right, can you tell us more about Terence and what it was like meeting him and how long you spent with him?
Oh, I knew him very well. I first met Terence in 1982, and I was in San Francisco. My book, A New Science of Life, had just come out in California. Okay. My publisher was in Los Angeles, Tarcher, and so I'd gone to the West Coast. I'd never been to California before. I'd been living in India for years before that, doing research in agriculture.
Wow.
I wrote my book in India. Anyway, I'd never been to California. I was in San Francisco. I'd given a lot of lectures there. There was a lot of interest in morphic resonance and so on. And I met somebody who said, there's a guy you've got to meet. He lives in Occidental, California. And I said, where's that? And he said, he said, I've arranged it all. He said, you get on the Greyhound bus at so-and-so, you get off at Santa Rosa, California, and he'll meet you, stand by the road in this place, and he'll meet you. So I thought, okay. And he said, and here's a tape with him talking. So I listened on a Walkman on the bus journey, on the Greyhound bus journey to Santa Rosa, to this Terence McKenna tape where he's talking about DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and its effects on consciousness. So I'd never heard anything like this before, and I thought this is really amazing stuff. And so I stood in the appointed place, and after a couple of minutes, this battered golden Cadillac drew up with sort of peeling tail fins, and the windows scrolled down, and there's this guy with curly hair and dark glasses who leant out of the window and said, Dr. Sheldrake, I presume. So he took me to his A-frame in Occidental. You had to go up a sort of path, and you had to pass a hut. I wondered what was in the hut. He showed me later it was full of mushrooms. He had to go and vaporize them every few hours, humidify the atmosphere. Right. Anyway, Ralph Abraham, his friend, was staying there, and Ralph's a chaos mathematician at the University of California at Santa Cruz. He's still there. And these two guys were just talking. They met, to talk to each other. And I just sort of parachuted into this discussion. Ralph was there anyway. And we started talking, and 48 hours later we were still talking. We had a little bit of sleep and ate a little bit. But, I mean, this was the most interesting conversation I'd ever had.
And being a fly on the wall on that.
And that was just such fun. So then after that, every year, Terence, Ralph and I met together and spent several days just talking all through the 80s. And then I think it must have been around, Terence was staying at the Esalen Institute, and Ralph and I met him there, and we were hanging out there. And the woman in charge of programs there, Nancy Lunny, dropped in, and she heard some of this conversation. She said, this stuff's incredible. Why didn't you do a program? Right? Why didn't you do this as a public program, a workshop?
The original podcast, really.
So, so the next year we did a 3-day program, public, people could come, and then it was recorded. None of the previous ones were recorded. From then on, we recorded these discussions, whether they were in public or private, and some of them were transcribed and turned into books. One book's called Chaos, Creativity and Cosmic Consciousness, and the other one's called The Evolutionary Mind. But then, about 4 years ago, Ralph was clearing out his garage in Santa Cruz, and he found this box in the garage covered with dust, and it was all these cassette tapes of these trialogues that we'd forgotten about. And there was someone he knew who was keen on Terence's work, who digitized them and put them online. And they're now all online on my website and on other websites where people can listen to these conversations. But the first 10 years were totally unrecorded, and then the next 10 years, most of them were recorded, and those are now in the public domain on the internet.
So 85 to 95 wasn't recorded?
No.
And then
no, from 82 to about 90 or 91 wasn't recorded.
Okay.
So maybe 9 or 10 years was totally unrecorded, but these were some of the highlights of my year. I mean, these three-way conversations. And we thought that three-way conversations are much better than just two-way or four-way. We thought three-way is a really good way to go. So, I mean, one of the things I like about your show here is you've got this trialogue format, which I find a really good one. If you have a dialogue, you can sometimes get stuck, and if you have three people, it can sort of move on in a way that's much more interesting.